Right, hello. It's been a while since I've put up a video on the Moiro Appropriation channel, so I figured this was a particular opportunity to be able to produce some content. So some of you may remember from videos of the past, whether it be on this Moiro Appropriation channel or on the main Sisyphus Complex Solution channel, that I've been making suggestions for the best part of 5 years now to have some kind of a solution to the political problems that are faced within the UK, obviously predominantly, and that, I mean, other countries you do what you want, but what I'd been suggesting is that we create a network of independent candidates, and because of that suggestion that I'd made, and because of what I can see has taken place over this weekend with Rupert Lowe launching this Great Yarmouth First, I figured it was something that I could talk about in terms of potentially a positive development and a slight variation on what I've been saying up until now. So if we just give a little bit of consideration of each time that I've said about the potential for independent candidates to be able to be voted in their local constituencies. Generally speaking, I keep getting the feedback of saying, well, you know, independents don't get elected. And so, as you can see from the results of the 2024 election, independents got more seats than Reform. So, you know, it is possible, despite the fact that lots of people will tell you that there's no practical way of this taking place. Now, insofar as these 6 independents is concerned, granted, we have to understand the situation that arose around those particular individuals being elected, because essentially what we were talking about there was the jihadi sectarian vote, and which, yeah, special circumstances, but it still does go to my point that if you've got the local population that is prepared to go along with a particular idea, you can do that. So when it came down to Rupert himself and his own particular seat, we can see that he got into Parliament in Great Yarmouth with 35.3% of the vote. Obviously, at that time, it was as a Reform candidate, but I don't really need to explain all of the shenanigans that took place in order for him to now be standing as an independent. But suffice to say, he's currently adding to that pool of independent candidates. So whereas it was 6 independent candidates before, because of that situation, there's now 7. Probably actually more than that, because there's been a whole range of nonsense that's taken place all over. But the subsequent work that Rupert has been doing, I think he's actually probably ended up solidifying that voter base that he's got, because, you know, I mean, the margin between him and Labour and that is, it wasn't that great, but the fact that they've been doing what they have been doing, I would suggest that it's probably got an awful lot better since, plus on the basis of his own performance. And so one of the other things that he did over the weekend was to produce he commissioned a poll via this organisation that he's got called Restore Britain, which is basically around policy initiatives. And within the poll that they put together and released over the weekend, we saw that just Rupert Lowe on his own across the country would be able to command a 10% vote, which is obviously pretty impressive, because considering you're talking about somebody that it's not possible for him to stand as a party of him across the entire country. But what it does do is give credence to the fact that people would vote for the independent candidate if they were to be working on a similar kind of basis as to what Rupert Lowe has been doing. And it's also possible that those independent constituencies can then actually operate together. So just on that alone, effectively, and that we can look towards saying, well, as a get-go, does this represent a potential for an independent constituency party collective, as much as I don't really like that kind of term, at least working towards a similar type of goal, like where they can have discussions and they have at least some kind of, not necessarily a formal agreement, but some level of ideological understanding as to heading in the same, with the same aims for the country, put it that way. It gives you an indication that there's a good start point for this kind of party to be able to do something substantial. So obviously what that did mean is, as you can tell from the front cover, the announcement was then made that, and the announcement, I only saw this yesterday, I don't think it was, I think it was just from yesterday anyway. So he's obviously launched this Great Yarmouth First Party. Essentially what this is a version of what I have been promoting all these years, but I think in its most fundamental form, this is probably a better idea than the one that I'd been stipulating, because I've always said, well, just stand as an independent under your own name and have a competent team around you. The reason why this is probably better is because it maintains the same constituency independence, and then that removes kind of like it removes the cult of personality. You don't have everything dependent on one particular individual, and so on that basis it kind of by default gives the local constituency party the opportunity for longevity. Essentially from there you can ensure that your local team is able to create the kind of system around themselves that would allow them to be able to maintain that competence and vision irrespective of who was actually at the head of the party. The ideal situation that I would add into the mix is that they'd be better off if they put the actual candidate themselves under some form of contract, just in case that there was any kind of issue that occurred, and you can do it under reasonable circumstances. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got this contract there because you need to be able to, or you're looking to be able to fire a particular individual. It does help to have that kind of backup if it's required, but you can have something where it's just a case of, we need you to be leading the constituency up until you may determine a particular period of time. Say you do like an American style system, that's all, no more than two parliaments, for example, which would then be, as far as the UK is concerned, 10 years. There's then the opportunity in that if somebody wanted to retire after one parliament, because like with the likes of Rupert Lowe, and that is obviously getting on a little bit, you're still going to be then maintaining the name of the constituency party. It's not all dependent on that individual person. Now, there are risks that come with this because it will need some vigilance, and you are absolutely going to have to be very cautious and careful about making sure that the lunatics are left out of the party, because they definitely will try to infiltrate. And so one of the other areas of consideration that other people around the country need to understand is that you need to be the first to the punch for your particular constituency region. If you just allow things to take place without your input, there's a distinct possibility that you'll end up with a regional party that is run by the lunatic left or by a group of jihadis. So you've actually got to beat them to the punch with this sort of stuff. It does then also mean that when it comes down to the national level, you are going to have to be having discussions with each and every constituency on a basis of a mutual understanding. And you will end up with another situation similar to the last election, where you'll have certain seats which have just been taken by the commies and the jihadis and all that sort of thing, and that where they're absolutely set on having this sectarian type of situation in the country. But what you can do with that is you all work together to say that once you're in Parliament, you can go, right, in terms of national policies, you could look towards having something being combated by saying, well, we're going to do something about foreigners being able to stand in public office. We're going to prevent that. Well, there's your jihadis situation dealt with, at least from a political standpoint. You could also turn around and say, well, you know, we're going to elevate the abhorrence within the nation towards things like communism, to put them on a par with every time anybody mentions the word Nazi. So then that puts your communists back into the corner that they belong in as well. These types of situations, and that will have an impact into some of the other lunatic parties like the Greens and your party, that type of stuff. So you can start to work towards making sure that their impact on the nation is limited. So the one potential negative and downside to this is that you have to be a little bit wise and careful about the attempt to use constituency-based parties for the intended development of the 15-minute city type of scenario. So they'll be looking towards the fact that you are a constituency-based party. They'll look to isolate you in some way. You have to be very, very cautious about that, and that's why you do have to have these conversations with the national constituency parties, if you understand what I mean. It could very much be a good solution, and something, like I say, which is an improvement on what I've been saying over the last 5 years. It does mean that the management of that particular party becomes much, much easier because you're only dealing with local level stuff. And it certainly causes a very serious headache to the standard types of attack modes of the media, where they want to tar an entire party with the same brush, which means, you know, a bit like what they're doing with Reform, you know, call one of them a Russian stooge, and then that sticks to the entire party. Well, you can't do that. That it's just not going to work if you're dealing with constituency-based parties. So you can just continue to develop the numbers in your local constituency, and if you're delivering on a local level but understanding what you need to do on a national level as well, you'll find that you've got something that you can really start to build on. And make sure that you do have some proper conversations with those people that are in other constituencies, but keep it friendly, but keep it outside of the media sphere, if you understand what I mean. Don't give them the opportunity to say, well, you're all actually the same, you're all operating as a single party, because you wouldn't be anyway. You literally wouldn't be anyway. Don't give them the opportunity to be able to play that kind of game. So it was just a very quick video this time, and that to say that I do think that there's potential around this idea, and it's something that people around the country might want to give a bit more consideration towards doing. But like I say, get in there first. Don't allow the lunatics to take up the opportunity before you do. I think that's about as much as I need to say realistically. So thanks very much, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye bye.